Confession music is on. Best of the week gets that smart speaker. Send yours. confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Today's comes from Emma. Emma, thank you very much. Dear Father Simon, the dignified and noble Sister Susie, and the brother from the gutter.
Yeah,
Brother
that's
Matthew.
right. Embrace it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brother from the gutter.
Brother from the gutter.
From the gutter.
I quite like that, actually.
Yeah.
That has a
Yeah,
it has a 10cc ring to it, but it also kind of works,
Yeah,
I think.
definitely.
During the long hot summer of 1976, says Emma, I was 17 years old and at Secretarial College. Punks are everywhere. Although Brotherhood of Man won the Eurovision Song Contest, and I, Emma, during the evenings of Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays, work in the local fish and chip shop. Good work, hard work at times, and all the very warm tins of Coke anyone could ever ask for. Always positioned just above the fryer. For some reason, you want a hot Coke?
Yes, please.
Aren't they just the display ones, though? Isn't there a fridge somewhere?
No such thing as a display Coke. Is there really? I don't know. I don't think so. Anyway, this is 1976, so this is back in the day. Everything is better now.
Okay.
I smelt of salt and vinegar all week, but that's not a bad thing now, is it? Says Emma. Well, I suppose it's better than smelling of fish. We sold battered cod, battered haddock, or battered sausage. For vegetarians, there was just the batter. I don't think the curry sauce had meat in it, but I wouldn't swear to that, to be perfectly honest. Now so many people are thinking, you know what? That's what I fancy now. Chips and curry sauce. Thank you very much. Especially on a starvy
day. Thanks again.
The owner of the fish and chip shop, Gaz, would prepare bucket loads of potatoes to be fried. The buckets were white, semi-opaque plastic with a metal handle. Every day I would find a line of these buckets ready to go. Now, Gaz used to like a beer or two, and there just happened to be a pub across the road from the fish and chip shop. During quiet periods, he would leave me alone in the shop and go over to the pub, probably to watch the Olympics, which was on that summer.
1976, yeah.
Montreal.
Yeah, Montreal.
Wow.
I was to see it's working. I was to telephone the pub if there was a sudden rush on. I never minded this as I enjoyed being in charge. I enjoyed the regulars. Sissy would always have the cod, 2 portions of chips, and a chat about the news. The country was going to the dogs, apparently.
Okay.
Old postman, well, it was 1976.
Okay.
Old postman Brian would always have the sauce and the chips with 100 weight of salt on each. My guess is he might not be with us anymore. But it was fun, Father Simon, and I liked the customers. So, one Saturday night, the fish and chip shop went quiet. Gaz goes off to the pub across the road. A few pints of Watney Red Barrel, doubtless. After about 10 minutes, a crowd of, I'm afraid to say, drunken Millwall football fans came into the shop. There were about a dozen of them. They were very hungry, and they seemed to want to buy everything. Was it time to call Gaz? No, sir. I felt I could cope. I knew what I was doing. Or so I thought. So, yes, what I did for the starving Millwall fans, I grabbed the bucket with the chips in it that was closest to me, and I threw the chips into the hot fat. Unfortunately, now obviously there's a whole number of things that could go at this point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I got carried away, and I regret to inform the collective that I let go of the bucket, and it ended up in the hot fat as well, and it sank very fast. I went into a panic, but felt the best thing to do was to try and get the bucket out. I grabbed the long-handled chip shovel and pulled out the metal handle, but the rest of the bucket had disintegrated into the hot fat. Well, it's fair to say that our football fans had not noticed this. They weren't noticing very much. They were still just milling about, joshing about the game and whatever football fans like to banter about. I could have sent them away. I could have recommended the Tasty Place, our deadly rivals in town. I could have called Gaz, but no. I felt the best thing to do was to just carry on regardless.
Oh, right.
And I dished up the chips to the Millwall supporters, obviously not mentioning the fact that they were possibly covered in plastic.
Yeah.
I put the compromising metal handle in my bag to dispose of at a later date. Now, I know opinions about plastic have changed since the 1970s, which I have to say is a hopeless line. But I do ask forgiveness from the Millwall supporters for serving them plastic-covered chips. But I don't think that they knew anything was wrong, as they were all quite drunk.
Oh, right.
Obviously, this was a Obviously, this was a dangerous thing to do.
Yes.
Yes.
And
waiting for that line.
don't recommend anyone
No.
tries anything like this at home. I also asked for forgiveness from Gaz for lying when a few days later he asked me if I knew anything about the missing bucket. And I said no, I knew nothing about the missing bucket at all. Well, the truth was the bucket had melted and it had formed an interesting coating over the chips,
Oh, lovely.
but no one had noticed. No, this is a very serious matter. Sister Susie got a serious face on.
Well, I have, because it's not just the Millwall supporters. Like, how long is that oil kept in that thing for? I would think quite a few more customers, if not, the rest of that evening. So you fed plastic-coated chips to many people that night. And I just don't think it's very nice. And I think you should have owned up and changed the oil. Because what if they were poorly? So, Emma, I'm sorry, not forgiven from me.
Brother from the gutter.
I'm going to say, if I know Emma, I'm going to say she will have told people other than the Millwall fans that, maybe don't have any chips tonight because I've lost a bucket in the fryer. So I'm going to say forgiven because, frankly, the fans were fine. There was never any problem. Well, I'm going to guess that they were fine, and I never heard any stories
Yes.
about that. So I'm going to say forgiven.
Okay. 61054 on the text. Do you forgive? It's the people's verdict. First word is Simon. Thank you. In plastic.
Wow.
To the drunken football supporters who'd come in. Anyway, it might be the best of the week. If it is, then Emma's going to get the smart speaker. But anyway, the people's verdict is in like this.
Yes, overwhelmingly people are forgiving here. Jerry from Western Supermare says, forgiven. After all, they were Millwall supporters. Simon in Woking says, forgiven. They were probably only plastic supporters anyway. But James Durrance, who's in Clacton-on-Sea, says, as a Millwall supporter
Yes.
and season ticket holder, and considering the bilge we normally get served from kiosks, I offer my full forgiveness. And finally, Winston in Cannock says, hi collective, I'd say plastic fantastic. Plastic fantastic.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so thank you very much. I think that's quite a strong contender for the smart speaker.
Yes,
don't you think
absolutely.
already? If you have a confession, maybe you can beat that. Maybe it's a chip shop confession. Maybe it's a football supporting confession. Maybe it's a summer of 76 kind of confession. We would love to hear it. Send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. So it's 12 minutes to 6 o'clock. Time for a confession. Today's comes from Charlie. If it's the best of the week, as decided by us, then Charlie will get the smart speaker.
Yes.
Simon and the confessional team. This confession goes back to the early 1980s. When I was training as a student nurse, I was doing my first set of night shifts, age 19, on a surgical ward, and not coping too well with the lack of sleep. I'd recently done my slips, trips and falls training, so I was being extra vigilant. I was focused, my eyes were everywhere. I was obsessed. Don't stand there, don't do that, do this, because I was good at my job.
Yeah.
As I did my evening ward round, I noticed some water on the floor by a patient's bed. This obviously had the potential to be a calamity. So many problems. Well, this is why I'd done the training. I knew what to do. I followed the letter of the law. I cleared the area, mopped, bucketed, moved a yellow danger warning cone to where the water had been mopped from, so all was well. The water had gone, the cone was in place. Beg your pardon? Smash the mic. Mic drop. All was safe again, or so I thought. At about 3 a.m. in the morning, we heard this almighty crashing noise coming from down the men's side of the ward. The sister and I ran down to see what had happened. As you know, 3 a.m. is a tricky time. Everyone gets a little wobbly, unsure of everything. You start to see things. You go walkabout. You forget your pajamas. You try to order pizza. All of these things are good 3 a.m. events.
Okay.
We're ready for those. However, there's really no easy to say what happened here. When we arrived at the bedside, to my horror, an amputee patient had tried to attach the yellow warning cone to his knee, thinking it was his false leg. This hadn't gone well, obviously, as it wasn't long enough, and he'd gone sprawling across the floor, knocking his bedside table over in the process. Also, just to complete the carry-on vibe, he sent his false teeth flying across the floor.
Please.
Oh, matron!
Oh, no.
When I'd cleared the area earlier, I had moved his false leg to another place to make way for the cone. But they weren't really similar to my eyes, as the cone was super bright yellow with the word caution written in vertical letters down the side and had a red triangle with a slipping man. And his leg looked like a leg with no red triangle and no writing on it anywhere. It certainly didn't say caution down the side of the trouser.
No, that's true.
Anyway, by now the whole ward was awake, wondering what on earth was going on. As the news travelled along the ward, hearty laughter was heard from everywhere. If Hattie Jakes, Barbara Windsor and Sid James had appeared, no one would have been surprised. I, however, was mortified, knowing I'd have to explain myself to the sister the next night. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt at all. I didn't sleep at all that night and went in early the next day to apologise to the patient. However, he'd gone home, so I missed my chance. But the other patients were still laughing and told me reassuringly that he'd taken it in very good humour and was actually in stitches telling his family about it. Not literal stitches, you understand, in this case, just the stitches of laughter.
Of course.
He'd also kept his false leg on for the rest of his inpatient stay, not letting it out of his sight. It's high time I apologised to the poor chap whose leg I'd replaced with a yellow warning cone, and also to the rest of the ward who lost a night's sleep after their operations that day, and also for the secret smiles that I still have when I see a yellow cone. Well, it's one of those things where, there was no one was trying, everyone was just trying to do the right thing. But let's see how judgmental people can be. Sister Susie first.
Well, I understand it could have been worse. If you hadn't have put the cone there and left the water there, then, some crazy accident could have happened and someone might have been damaged. But you could have just said to him, just be careful. I've moved your leg. Moved your leg. It's here. If you need it, it's here.
Yes.
Just, that's where it is. It's not this cone. Maybe, I just feel like maybe you should have just let him know. You're not just going to move it, but not tell them.
Considering Charlie had been on the slip strips and falls training, he missed out there. Matt, brother from the gutter.
Yeah, I mean, we're clearly in carry-on country land here, aren't we? I mean, it's, Charlie's he's done everything he could to make sure that everything was sorted out. And yes, he did move the leg, but, I would say the onus is on you to work out what you're putting where. So I am going to forgive.
So it's the patient's fault.
It's the patient's fault.
Well,
That's my point.
yes,
Yeah,
really.
yes, quite reasonably, I think. So kept his leg on for the rest of the time. I also found it hilariously funny, as did we all. So, definitely forgiven.
Also, it was bright yellow.
Bright yellow,
But it was 3
caution.
It was dark.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not his fault.
No. Well,
anyway,
I say it is.
The argument continues. It's the people's verdict that matters. Do you forgive Charlie? Yes or no? 61054. First word is Simon. It's the people's verdict, 61055. However, first of all, the people's verdict on tonight's confession, which came from Charlie, who was trying to do the right thing as a student nurse, and there was a water spillage, so put in a yellow warning cone, but unfortunately an amputee fell out the bed and used the cone as a leg. Anyway, no one was hurt, everyone was forgiven, and everyone was fine in the end. But here's the people's verdict.
Yeah, well, everyone's forgiving. Jerry from Western Supermare says, forgiven, I'm with Brother Matt on this one. How can someone confuse a yellow cone for an artificial leg? I bet those patients are still laughing. NJ says, totally forgiven. Amusing mental image. Mr. False Leg clearly got a giggle out of it too. No malice intended, and he might not have appreciated being woken up at 3 a.m. to be told that his leg had been moved. And Lucy in Brighton says, forgiven, best laugh I've had since my nan's teeth fell in the casserole while she was cooking.
Okay, There you go. Well, maybe it's inspired. I mean, hospital-based confessions are always intriguing. Nurse and doctor-based confessions often make it to the radio and win a smart speaker.
Really?
Just saying. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. So it's 13 minutes before 6 o'clock. Patrice Rushen, Forget Me Nots on Greatest Hits Radio at drive time. So here we are, ready to go with another confession. If it's the best of the week, then Bruce and Shirley, who send this in. I've changed the names.
Okay, I've already... Yeah, go on.
I think we changed the names. I think we changed the names a couple of times.
I know. And I'm sure one day you just changed them back to where they were originally by mistake. Dear Father Simon, Sister Susie, brother from the gutter, here we go then. Let me tell you, says Bruce, is what my guess is. Let me tell you a story of an everyday parent's nightmare. I'll change the names, as two of the people don't even know today that this happened.
Uh-oh.
So pour yourself a stiff drink, close the curtains, and I will begin. I think, Bruce, you're building your part up here. You're writing a confession at afternoon theatre. But anyway, he's painting pictures with words. That's what he's doing.
Theatre. Right, okay, cool.
Was that a thing, afternoon theatre?
It was in the 70s. Anyway,
a group of us decided to go on holiday to Florida to visit the home of the mouse with the big ears. Now, I know about the mangroves and the beaches and the swamps and Key West and Key Largo, yada yada, but it was Disney World for us, baby. The Magic Kingdom, the rides, the overpriced character breakfasts, the choice of Disney music on the radio, the Disney-themed drinks at the bar, the Disney bedrooms, Disney food, and Disney films on 24/7. I think the clue here for you, Bruce, is the word Disney.
Yeah.
And then world.
World of Disney.
World of Disney.
The world of
It's everything Disney
Yeah.
that you could possibly want. That's what Disney World is all about. Well, one day, two of our group, who we'll rename Denise and David, wanted a day to themselves for some quality adult time without their child, called Baby David. Not a very original name, really, considering the father, but we overlooked their lack of creativity and assumed it was because they were a gangster family or something like that. Somewhere where the patriarchy still ruled and is waiting to be dismantled. Now, my guess is that might have been Shirley who added that bit.
Yeah.
So being the nice people that we always promised our fairy godmothers that we'd grow up to be, we said we would take baby Davy with us as we were going to visit downtown Miami. I mean, I wouldn't want to take a baby downtown Miami. But anyway, we volunteered. We were actually leaving the Magic Kingdom. So off we all set, full of the joys of spring. All of us, Denise and Big David, to presumably canoodle and frolic, whilst me and my wife, the borrowed baby David, and Jim and Babs from Birmingham, two others on our trip, we all set off in the big car. I'm not sure that borrowed baby is quite the right way to think of baby David. Whilst we were out, we decided to visit the Harley-Davidson showroom. And I think we were hoping to gain back some of our lost youth. Anyway, we had a lovely time looking around the showroom. There was the VR 1130cc custom cruiser. Very nice. The Dyne FXDX Super Glide. The Sportster 1202, all your favourites were there, Father Simon. We stroked the chrome, we sat on the leather. We imagined that we were on Route 66 with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda and all that kind of thing. Wow. Anyway, by now, we were tired and it was gin o'clock. So we all met up outside the showroom to find somewhere to quench our thirst. We'd been walking for some time and I believe it was me, realised that we actually didn't have baby David with us anymore.
No.
I looked at Jim and Barbara, and they looked at us, and each of us said, I thought you had baby Davy. But no, neither of us did. Well, Jim's face turned white, and he and I ran at top speed back to the showroom. It was only a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. He ran faster than anyone had ever run ever before, only to find baby Davy still asleep in the pushchair, next to, I must say, a rather stunning touring 1750 Ultra.
Oh, no.
Immaculate condition, low mileage, heated grips as well.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Jim must have been daydreaming about riding this bike with the wind blowing through his last few strands of hair, as it was he who had forgotten that he had the baby in his control, except that he didn't. Anyway, all safe, we went to fill our glasses with some strong pop to calm ourselves. Later on, Denise and Dave joined us. They could not understand why we all looked somewhat shaken and stirred.
Oh, it does it again. First of the week.
First of the week. They couldn't understand, these parents, why we looked shaken and stirred and not talking to each other. Also, we never offered to look after the baby again, for obvious reasons, but I need seek forgiveness, not really from Dave and Denise, but from baby Davy, as we completely forgot that we had him, which is not really something that grown-ups should do.
No.
To this day, Father Simon, they don't know that we lost the most precious thing in their life whilst we were dreaming of driving those Harleys. So it was kind of, I'm not that impressed with Bruce and Shirley, really. Distracted by the chrome, they forgot about the baby. I don't think I'm going to forgive. What do you think, Sister Susie, the voice of responsibility?
Well, I just think the fact that it was that long ago and they can still remember all the details about the particular Harley that it was just shows you how distracted they were, and they didn't really care. care about baby Davy. So I just think, no, not forgiven. If you're going to take your friend's baby, you look after it and you don't lose it.
I think that's a fair comment. Let's try the brother from the gutter.
Well, I'm going to forgive. Number one, I went to Florida once. I shan't be going back. A little bit too hot for my liking, and I thought
bit
the reference
too bling as well.
Quite a lot of bling there. I thought the reference to last few strands of hair that felt unnecessary, but I'm going to forgive. I'm going to forgive because of the shaken not stirred reference on today of all days. So yes, I am forgiving again.
Wow.
Okay, so it's the people's
Mr.
verdict.
Bond.
Do you
Yeah.
do you
God, they're
forgive
not your friend.
Bruce and Shirley? On the text, please, 61054. Start your message with Simon. Do you want to dole out some forgiveness on this day? You text 61054 and you start your message with Simon. People's verdict on tonight's confession. People's verdict is due on tonight's confession, which came from Bruce and Shirley, who basically were on holiday in Florida. They were looking after someone else's baby, which they then left behind in a Harley-Davidson showroom because they were so intoxicated by the chrome and the leather. Anyway, here's the people's verdict.
Yes, Julia in Oxford says, forgiven. Having been seduced by a Harley dealership in Tampa myself, I completely understand the lapse of concentration. I went one further, though, by passing my test and buying a Harley. Completely not a midlife crisis. Andy from Wallasey, though, not a fan. I can't forgive. Only a baby would want that American tractor. Real bikers ride proper bikes.
Excellent. Then we're getting to the heart of it
yes,
now.
that's why. And these two are both anonymous for a reason that will become
Can I just say, before
obvious.
you read those, isn't that great that the reason for the forgiveness or not forgiveness is the
I don't
opinion
like
on the
Harleys.
motorbike
Yes, absolutely.
rather than leaving a baby
Quite
behind.
right.
Anyway,
quite
carry
right.
on.
These two are anonymous. I have no choice but to forgive. As a new mum many years ago, I left my baby in the pram in order to do the shopping. I managed to get halfway home before suddenly realising I was missing something. I ran back to find baby and pram still outside the shop. And this one, forgiven. Back in 1971, I left my new baby in the hairdresser's. Walked home, had a coffee, then realised what I'd done. He's 50 now, and I've never told him.
Didn't David Cameron do that when he was Prime Minister?
I do remember that story,
I think
yes.
he did that. All right,
Yes.
well, we'll take some of your confessions. Maybe that has provoked a thought. Maybe it's a Disney World confession. Maybe it's a... Where did I put that child?
Didn't we have a child?
Sometime. Anyway, drop us a line, please. It's confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's radio. You've got a confession for us? Send it in. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. The collective is assembled. Sister Susie, producer, of course, a very fine figure of respect, and the brother from the gutter.
Yes.
Matthew.
Not so much respect.
No.
Not
at
really.
all.
Today's confession comes from Belinda. Belinda, thank you very much indeed for sending in this story. If it's the funniest, it's going to get a smart speaker. Simon and the Collective, this is not exactly a confession from myself, rather from a good friend, although she doesn't know it yet.
Oh.
I set the scene. We're in the mid-1980s, during the summer holidays. Myself, my friend Nettie, her two sisters, Bev and Kath, and Nettie's boyfriend Ben, were driving from Dover down to the south of France in a hired car packed to the rafters with camping equipment. Nettie and Ben in the front sharing the driving and sharing the snoozing. Me, Bev and Kath in the back all chit-chatting for the entire journey. And in those days I remember it being a long and tiring trip. I think it still is a long and tiring trip. Not a lot has changed. Our destination was a campsite, and get this, for a one-night stay near the Spanish border somewhere near Perpignan.
Wow.
So that's from Dover to the Spanish border for an overnight.
Couldn't manage 2 nights, no?
I mean, this is like
Or somewhere closer.
crazy. We reached the campsite late afternoon, all excited and relieved that the journey was over. Now, being the summer holidays, the campsite was quite busy, but after cruising around for a short while, we managed to find a nice piece of tidy, gravelled ground on which to park and set up camp on the nearby grass. We all tumbled out of the car and had our first look around. There were a few people about doing usual camping things and a small huddle of Frenchmen close by who eyed us all with what looked like a little Gallic disgust. Well, that's the French for you. Sorry about your submarines, guys. Well, we didn't say that because that's a 2021 reference.
Yeah.
We smiled back and one of us tried our best French on them. Bonjour.
That's very good.
We said,
Excellent.
as I recall, they were Jacques, Nicolas and Benoit. Surly and resentful types, but we ignored them and we got on with our unpacking. There was a lot to do. 2 tents to put up. None of these pop up in 30-second jobs. No, not in the mid-80s when the guy rope was king. Eventually, after a couple of hours, we were all tented up. The cooking equipment was up and ready for use, and me, Bev and Kath had made our little niches in our shared tent with air beds pumped up and clothes and toiletries neatly stashed away. It had taken a long time. I'd had a bit of trouble with my own airbed. It had taken a long time to inflate due to the foot pump and airbed seemingly not really getting on together. But after a while, I got it inflated to an acceptable squashy but firm enough support. Upon testing the airbeds, all three of us thought it would be a good idea to have a little snooze before supper. As the travelling and unpacking had subsequently taken its toll, all three of us fell asleep quickly. When we woke up, we groggily crawled from the tent to be met by Nettie and Ben, sitting around the camp cooker. "Morning," they chirped in unison. "No." "Yes, morning." "We haven't slept all night, have we?" "Certainly have," said Nettie, who was poking some sausages about in a pan, handed us some coffee. "We thought we'd get the breakfast going, seeing as we woke up first." All that way, still sleepy-eyed and in a bit of a daze, all three of us trudged off to the campsite showering facilities to freshen up and get ready for the day ahead. But not before I'd decided. Obviously, I had to let down my airbed and take the tent down and put it away, ready for the journey home. Freshly showered, teeth cleaned, makeup on, and hair all done for the long journey back. Who does their hair for the journey back?
For the car?
Anyway, we left the shower block in unison, but immediately noticed that the nice sunny morning that we thought we had experienced had melted away into a darkened evening. Yes, the rotters had duped us into thinking we had slept all night, when in fact we'd slept for about 90 minutes. Anyway, we rushed back to the tent, singular, to find Nettie and Ben rolling around laughing like hyenas. They particularly liked the fact that I had to put the tent up again and re-inflate my airbed and sniggered continually at the cursing of the foot pump. Simon and the collective, as far as the forgiveness is concerned, this might surprise you actually, I do not seek forgiveness from my mates Nettie and Ben on their behalf. We're still besties all these years later, and the trick worked a treat. We as a group, however, would like to seek forgiveness from the small huddle of Frenchmen. You remember Jacques, Nicolas et Benoit.
Uh-huh.
You remember them?
Yeah. There it is.
Sinister. Sinister and surly. These are the men that we first met when we rocked up and parked on that nice, tidy little patch of gravel, which we discovered later they had just raked and lovingly prepared for their very important match of boule later that very evening. Apparently it was the final or something. That's why they looked so surly and difficult. I'm sure they found another patch of scruffy land because the campsite was full of it. But I would hate to think that we made the entente cordiale any more tricky than it always is. Anyway, désolé pour vous sous-marins. Sorry about your submarines, I think that is.
Yes.
Et vive la différence, says Belinda, the sender in of tonight's confession. Voulez-vous coucher? Oh no, you can't because we haven't got any time. Anyway, let's check in with Sister Susie. What do you have? What do you think?
Well, Belinda, I don't know. I just don't know why you go on holiday for one night, and I'm not sure I can get past that at all.
All that way.
Also, you're a bit rude to your French neighbours as well, and you ruined their boules?
Game of boule, yes.
Pétanque?
Pétanque and boule, the same kind of
Same
thing, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
which, if they haven't got anywhere to play it, that's a bit mean. And it was the final, so I'm really sorry. I can't forgive you, mainly because who goes on holiday for one day?
It is a very long way to go for an overnight.
Yes, I mean, it's very Gallic, isn't it? It's very much not clinging to what the man wants you to do, to go on holiday for just one night. Go on holiday for a night. Very, very French. Où est le tour Eiffel? Don't get between Benoit and his boule. That would be my life lesson. I am going to forgive, but I wasn't going to forgive until we got a little bit of French accent at the end, because I thought that was sorely missing. But we did get some French accent.
Désolé pour vous sous-marins.
I
mean, what more do you want? Anyway, people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Belinda, yes or no? On the text, please. 61054. First word is Simon. Thank you very much. So your collective about to vote for the best confession of the week. Hand out the smart speaker. But the people's verdict has been coming in on tonight's confession from Belinda and her mates and her bizarre overnight camping from Dover to Perpignan and messing around with a game of boule. The people's verdict like this.
Yeah, so Catherine says, forgiven. I now understand why a friend thinks nothing of getting a flight to Rome for lunch. Hannah from Worcester, Hannah from Worcester says, not forgiven. Who goes that far for one night? Go camping in the Forest of Dean, where there are beautiful woods, fields, fire pits, and shower blocks.
Wow.
And Rachel Cannon says, forgiven. The Frenchmen should have concentrated less on their surliness and more on actually telling them to move. Less complaining, more action. Rather like the submarines.
Very good. Another submarine reference, which is always very fine. So Monday, the confession was from Emma, the chip shop, and the plastic-covered chips being served to Millwall fans. Charlie's confession on Tuesday was the yellow cone false leg story.
Yes.
Bruce and Shirley yesterday, when they left the baby behind, distracted by a Harley Davidson. And today's the French overnight camping story. I think my favourite one was the chip shop story with the plastic covered chips. What do you think?
I think it should go to the ones who forgot the baby, and they should give it to the baby. That's what I'm thinking.
Matthew.
Okay, I'm going to go for the chip shop one because I did like that one with the bucket.
It had football supporters in it.
It did.
Why?
Yes, it is because I'm obsessed with sport. That's why.
So predictable. Anyway, it's our confession of the week then. Emma, the chip shop story, the melted plastic bucket, and the plastic-covered chips served to Millwall fans. You're going to get the smart speaker. If you have a confession for us, we would love to hear from you. What you do is you type it out and you send it in. And you send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. More than one paragraph, and I would say less than 6 pages would be quite good for our general health.